Let's go. Yo. Get up, nah, I ain't a quitter. Toss me the ball, I'm a really big hitter. Big picture, I'm a straight killer. Rising the song to the highest bidder. Got juice, got gas, I'ma move fast. New shoes, new tracks, like who's that? I'm new, come back, better than last. Yeah, it's a new me, never gonna look back. Never gonna look back. Cause damn, I was built to last. You move slow and I move fast. And that's facts.
Well, hello and welcome in, monsters of the Madhouse Chicago Sports Podcast. We're so happy to have you guys along with us tonight. Thank you so much for watching as we are talking everything Bears, getting ready here for free agency, getting everything ready here for the draft coming up in a couple of weeks. And we're going to be covering that. So make sure you like and subscribe our YouTube page, our YouTube channel. And once you do that, notifications will start popping up on your phone. We have shows all the time. So we thank you enough. I already got people chiming in the chat already. I see Viz Joe in there, Plank, Brandon, what's going on? And I want to introduce to you guys our host with us tonight, and a guy that I'm very excited to introduce to you. Just talking to him here for the last half hour, I think I've learned more about football than I have in the last 10 years talking to this guy. Bearlissmo, Bear, what's going on, man? It's good to have you with us.
It's good to be here. What's got two thumbs and loves to talk about football? This guy. Good to see some familiar names in chat. So thank you for the warm welcome, everybody. I'm happy to be here and talk some Bears off season and going into the next season, and with a little bit of hope, I hope.
Yeah, with a lot of how many times have we said that every year? With a little bit of hope, just going into the offseason, huh?
I think that's where Bears fans live most of the time, to be honest, is in perpetual hope to be dashed later on by the Bears.
And Bearlissmo, before we dive in here, because we're going to talk about some free agents here, some potential targets in free agency, maybe some names that we hear the big names that we talk about, especially on this show: Trey Smith, Josh Sweat, Khalil Mack, the names that have popped up, but maybe some other names that that maybe we're not necessarily familiar with. We're going to get into that, and then we're going to get into a little bit of the draft. And Bearlissmo is going to break down some tape as well on some of these players that we're going to be looking at in the draft. So thank you guys again. I see you guys. I see David chiming in right now. So thank you guys. Bearlissmo, before we get into this, you were talking a little bit about your playing career, and you played professional ball, professional ball outside of the States here. Your career, which was really intriguing to me. Could you talk a little bit about that before we jump into the show tonight?
Yeah, so I started off lying about my age, should have been playing youth team football, and I was playing senior football from the age of 16 years old. I was lying, saying I was 21 years old in a senior team, and then it was semi-pro ball, but I wasn't one of the players being paid. But I was fortunate enough. My first 4 years of playing football, I was coached by a former USC coach. Learned a lot from him, and then the Tamworth Trojans and Phoenix United Sutton and Tamworth Trojans, and a number of years on and off playing football, watching football, coaching football. I started off as a running back and a defensive end, ended up as I got older and fatter and slower as a defensive tackle and offensive guard. At the end of my playing career, that's where I was playing, but played a number of years at tight end, played against a couple of current and one current NFL player, one previous NFL player who I played with as a colleague and against. So I've got some experience playing against guys who are pretty good and guys who have gone on to college now. Even coached a couple of players who've done pretty well for the international team and things like that. So a lot of experience over here in the UK. Obviously, as a Bears fan, reason why I chose the Bears, I started watching football in '84. The Bears already had a good defense. What we didn't have was a cohesive offense at that point. Birmingham is the twin city of Chicago. They're both the second cities of their respective countries. And I love the navy and orange, and watching that defense flying around, just smacking the hell out of people. That was it for me. I was hooked. I love defensive football. I love offensive football as well. But whether it's a choice between carrying a ball and knocking someone on the butt, or just knocking someone on the butt as a defensive player, both was good for me. I love the contact, which is probably why I should have stayed away from playing QB. But I was only there as a reserve, an emergency reserve. Didn't have the mindset for it in terms of not wanting to go and hit people.
And that's why we're happy to have you on with us tonight. And there's no better guy to break things down for Chicago Bears, as you just heard him say, becoming a Bears fan. And no better way to become a Bears fan as you're talking about the '84 and '85 season with the defense flying around. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about free agency here. So thank you guys again for watching tonight. And as we start the show off tonight, Bearlissmo, I'm going to pull up our screen and there you go. We're going to pull it up. We're going to talk about some of the free agency, by the way, starts here in just a couple of weeks on March 10th. And you've already seen some of the stories coming out of guys being transition tagged or guys that are going to be tagged or guys that are going to be released. Heck, I don't think anybody's been tagged yet for the first time that I can remember right now. So we're going to kind of go over some of the position players, some of the position guys that we're looking at. We were kind of talking about this Bearlissimo even before the start of the show. And there's a couple of guys on here that stand out to us. So I was thinking maybe we start off with the offensive line, because I think that's a hot topic when it comes to the Bears, whether it's a guard or a tackle. And I want you to explain to our audience out here, Bearlissimo, kind of what you were telling me on what you were looking for as opposed to free agency in the draft. Why you would choose maybe going with a guard, or would you go with a tackle to start off in the draft, and why that is?
Yeah, so obviously there's lots of different ways you can build a team. There isn't necessarily a wrong way, depending upon who your coaches are and how good they are at teaching. A lot of positions, though, they do require certain elements where you can't really get that much help because you will be isolated by a defensive coordinator. So, in other words, certain positions on the offensive line, like centre, being able to make the calls, being able to pick up the blitzes, knowing which side is your strength, where the pressure is going to come from, being able to do those things, you've got to either have someone who is a bit of a savant at doing it from the college level and they can transition very quickly, or you need to have someone who's got experience of seeing these defenses, seeing what the looks are, and has got experience of playing there. So, for example, centre is a position where it's quite rare to see a centre come in as a rookie, except for the exceptional ones. You know, like Frazier last year at the Steelers until he got injured. There was Jackson Powers Johnson, although he played exclusively guard last year. And so, you know, the previous year there was the guy who went to the Giants. It was a former Minnesota Schmitz. I think Schmitz was the other one.
Schmitz, right.
Yeah, so he was the guy that you know. All three of those centers were guys that we could have picked over the last couple of years, but the Bears decided to stay away from it, which for last year was ridiculous because it's probably the best draft for centers that I've seen in the last 15 years. Last year was, but we decided to go different routes, obviously with a lame duck coach. But yeah, the interior, I think you get less chance to be helped out. So you, for example, your guard. I was explaining when you've got a lot of teams play like one tech or a three tech. So obviously the techniques. The A gap is where your one tech would be. The B gap, which is between guard and tackle, that would be where a three would be. So A, B, and then C is obviously between sort of tackle and tight end, and that's the way it goes. But a tackle, you can give help with a guard, you can give help with a tight end, or you can chip a running back to that side if it's in pass pro. So you can help out a tackle a little bit more than a guard, although you do tend to look as a running back, you look inside to out when you're in pass protection. But very often as a guard, you'll be centered. Everything happens a lot quicker at guard and center than it does at tackle. You get much bigger and stronger players than you will ever have seen in college at the NFL level at guard and center, because those interior guys are athletic freaks. And I don't use the word lightly. I mean, you've only got to look at our own boy Billings. You look at him, you see, what almost looks like a cannonball on legs. That's kind of how he plays, but his lateral agility is incredible. His acceleration is incredible, and that's the type of athlete you've seen at, the interior positions, and it's the shortest position to a quarterback. So it's a place where you've got to get it right. For me, I would like to see at least one veteran at guard, and I'd like to see a starting centre that we can rely upon. Even if we're going to draft one, I would still like to see a starting centre that we can rely upon. I think that is certainly two positions where you do need to have a veteran presence. You do need to have some leadership there and guys who understand what it is to play at the NFL level. Obviously, a lot of consternation about Trey Smith. He's probably going to be the highest paid offensive lineman this year in free agency. So it'd be interesting to see, but that's where I would prioritise your vet help would be on the interior rather than at tackle. I think it's a pretty good draft at tackle to a degree. There are guys that you can project inside from tackle as well from the college ranks, but I think round one is where I'd be looking for a tackle for the Bears.
And to your point, so kind of what I've gotten out of that too. So I think we start off with our free agents. Let's talk about some of the guards that are
Yeah,
available outside of Trey Smith. And to your point, with that help, to what I'm hearing from you is when you're talking about the tackle, you could put a young tackle in. If they draft it like in the first round, they go after a guy like Campbell. They could put him in, knowing that he might have some of those rookie struggles, but he can grab some help. There could always be some help to that side, as opposed to a guard. When you bring in a guard where you sign that veteran presence for the guard, that guard could also be that help to that tackle, and that could help accelerate that guy's career just a little bit more is what I'm trying to get at.
it is definitely the case. I mean, a guard is critical because you can have two spots, like you say. A tackle, yes, there's two sides, but generally speaking, you won't always have a tight end tackle. But you can send some help there. You can scheme some help there. So coming off the edge, you can crack down with a receiver, for example, on the short side. You can you can bring a tight end in motion. You can send a running back there. There's a lot of ways you can help that. But with guard, both in the run and in the pass, you're the first point of contact on the defensive line. It's really important to get it right, and that's the reason why I think it would be useful to get some vet help there. Certainly, some starter type level of players, and I think there are some options that people maybe aren't thinking about. Um, with the Bears in on the interior and even at tackle and at centre as well. Some names that people maybe you don't necessarily have to shop at Prada to get something you can wear. You know, what I mean,
It,
it's one of those things where you can get guys who are, I mean, some names that obviously will send shivers down the spine of Bears
oh,
fans. He says circling Lucas Patrick there, but
you're going to touch a nerve with some of the people in the chat when you do that, man.
yeah, without a doubt, and rightly so. But there are some players like Ben Bradison who's got some experience both at guard and at centre. Brandon Scherf is on the older, sort of downhill side of his career. Started out at tackle, moved into the interior. Trey Smith, obviously, he's the darling. He's going to get paid extremely well. Robert Jones at the Dolphins, a right guard who's dependable. Matt Pryor, I thought, did very well for us last year. I wouldn't
Agree.
be averse to seeing him come back. Aaron Banks is, if you can imagine, a left-sided Matt Pryor. Aaron Banks would be him. As a left guard coming in, a player that's played a lot of football for the 49ers, a wide zone scheme, definitely West Coast offense type scheme, a guy that would be a similar sort of fit. And then in terms of some other players that you're looking further down, Cade Mays is a guy that was out of Tennessee that played very well. Brock Hoffman was out of Virginia Tech. He's a guy who was a centre but can play guard as well. But he moved to right guard last year because they had one of my favourite guards in the draft last year. They moved to centre and he played very well for them. Cooper Beebe. So he played very well. And Brock Hoffman is a guy that's very good at centre or at guard, but again, not a name and a name that I wouldn't be averse to if he was, depending upon how his injury is looking. I wouldn't be averse to seeing James Daniels back, who gives you versatility at both centre and both guard positions. Played left guard for the Bears and played right guard at the Steelers as well as centre.
And
So
so I live in a house, so girlfriend, diehard Steeler, watch every Steeler game here. And I could tell you too, James Daniels for the last 3 years has been very solid for them. Now he did get hurt
yeah,
last year, so I guess to your point, you would have to see how healthy he is coming. And I think everything that I've read, he's going to be healthy coming into free agency this year. But he had a pretty bad injury. The other guy I would like you to explain on Bearlissmo is from the Vikings, Dalton Reisner is another one that
yeah,
I believe is on that list. That's a free agent. I think I saw that on here. Yeah,
yeah,
right there.
here.
Yeah, I think is another pretty good player.
He is when he's fit, but he's had a lot of issues in staying healthy for the last few years.
Mhm.
Um, Now he's 30. Obviously, he's at for offensive linemen, you're normally pretty good up until sort of 33, 34, and then you start to see a tail off. If you're able to stay healthy in the majority of your career, there's no reason why you can't see an offensive lineman, particularly on the interior, play well into their sort of early to mid 30s. But once you start getting to that, you really are a shorter contract looking guy. I mean, obviously Zach Mine, I think, said he's going to retire. He's one of the old guys. Zeitler is a guy that the Lions. would come ready-made with understanding what our head coach Ben Johnson would want from the offense, and certainly would give you all the experience in the world. Still a very, very good guard. 91.4% of snaps last year. Stayed very healthy. Robert Jones is a guy as well, very athletic but younger. So when you're looking at Trey Smith money or Robert Jones money, where you can get a similar athletic profile with Robert Jones as you would get with Trey Smith. Is he Trey Smith? No. And he's not going to get paid like him, but he's, again, a very athletic guard who's a big dude as well. So, and I think that's going to be something that's looking at what the Lions do. I don't think we can sort of say they're going to get a photocopy of what the Lions had on the offensive line. They're going to build it based upon what they like. And obviously, there's a guy at right tackle as he is on here, who played in the Super Bowl for the Eagles, Mekhi Becton. He's going to get paid not as well, but an absolute mammoth. Playing at guard, and played very, very well at guard. 26 years old. Not going to get the money of a Trey Smith, but a guy that you could put in the right guard for the Bears, and would give you definitely a huge upgrade on what we had last year. But then there's a couple of other guys that I like as well. Matt Peart's a good guy that you could put inside right tackle or right guard, and Jack Driscoll as well. Loved him. I think he was Penn State.
Penn State, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Penn State. I think he came out of. He's a guy I've liked for a lot of years, but he's a shorter arm tackle, but very dependable. But that kind of projects better for an athletic guard to me. But again, a guy that not a lot of people are talking about, but there are guys here on this tackle list that you can really sort of project more on the interior. So there is some versatility, as we've seen, not only in sort of looking for a guard itself, but also guys who have got experience of playing guard.
What and that center is another one we were talking about earlier. Is the position, as you were talking about, as experience goes, and as you want to build it in from out when it comes to free agency and the draft. And there's a couple of, and the first, I liked where you're going right there. Josh Myers was the first one on my list too when I was looking at the centers.
For me, if you can get better yourself and also hurt an opponent who's in division, I think that's always a double win. And whilst a lot of people are talking about Drew Dolman. Drew Dolman is a good centre, but again, as you can see, 48.5% of the snaps got injured last year. He's had a couple of years, but he's the sort of the darling that everyone's talking about. The two guys here, I think, are legit starters at centre, and even Evan Brown, who was a guy that we could have signed as a free agent last year, and would have been an improvement on what we had. He played very well for the Cardinals last year. So all three of these guys, I think Liam Eichenberg, former left tackle at Notre Dame, has played left tackle, left guard, centre, and right guard in the NFL. So he's a guy that I look at, and I think, played majority of his snaps last year at centre for the Dolphins, but a guy that you could legit, think about as a left guard, centre, right guard, and even at a pinch left tackle. So
and Bearlissmo, I think that's a guy that Tua spoke very highly of too. If I don't quote me on that, but I think Tua spoke pretty highly of him too.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, both of these guys in terms of fit. I mean, you go to Notre Dame offensive lineman. He's a Harry Heastand coached player when he was at Notre Dame. And Harry, one thing, he's a very good offensive line coach. The guys that come out of Notre Dame, they're not necessarily the highest recruited athletes, but they always put out dependable offensive linemen. And I think that's what you would be getting with Liam Eichenberg. A guy who struggled early in his career and trying to find his fit in the NFL, was moved around a little bit, maybe too much when he was first drafted. Found a home at centre last year, but again, a guy that I like particularly as a potential target for the Bears at centre or guard.
Right. Thank you guys for watching. I see you guys in the chat. We got Plank, we got Keith Harris. Thank you guys so much for watching today. Chicago Sports Podcast, sponsored by the Madhouse. We're going over free agency right now. We're kind of looking at first thing we're pointing is the offensive line. Bearlissmo breaking down our centers. We broke down the different guards, centers, and we're going to go over a couple of tackles right now. I see a couple on here that stand out to me. I like Cam. I think Cam Robinson actually I like Cam Robinson. Ronnie Staley is the one that is an interesting one. Is Ronnie Staley, is he going back to the Ravens? Is what's like his playing status afterwards? I know there's some questions for him about Ronnie Staley,
Yeah.
but that's probably the name that's going to stand out right away if you think Bearlissmo.
It depends whether he's going to take a hometown cut, but I think it's going to be very difficult because Makari was a left guard that moved in when Stanley was injured at left tackle, and he played very well for the Ravens last year. So I think there's a chance that one of these guys may see free agency, but I don't think realistically, I don't think both do. So I think they'll be looking. The Ravens will be looking to spend money on one of these two guys, but both I think could be legit starters. But a guy again that not a lot of people are talking about is Alaric Jackson, Iowa, former Iowa player. He's a guy that's not really been sort of. He started with the Rams. He's played all of his career at the Rams, and didn't start early on, but he's a guy that's worked at it, worked at it, worked at it. He was a very unspectacular but good left tackle. I don't know if that's I don't know what would you call that? Like a pickup truck of left tackles. So he's not like a Ferrari of left tackles, but he's just like he's dependable.
He's your blue collar man. Your blue collar worker.
Yeah, he's one of those pickup trucks which has still got the the powerful V8 engine, like the little sleeper sort of truck. That's what he is for me. He's very dependable in both pass and run. I think he would be, in terms of dependability, I think he'd be an upgrade over what we currently have. Braxton Jones, if he ever learns to sit his butt down in pass pro and use his core and keep his feet, he's got all of the length in the world. He's got all the athletic talent in the world. He's a fantastic run blocker in space. He's really good when he works in a double, sort of like a zone block with a guard or a tight end, working those double blocks in the run. Very dependable run blocker. In pass pro, he's got ridiculously long arms, but he always lets people into his chest. Why is that? Because he doesn't sit his ass down and then he has to move his feet and he doesn't get his hands out in front of him. He's got to learn to independently hand strike. He's got to learn to keep his ass down in pass pro and keep a functional, what you call a functional pass set, because he gets too high. People get into his chest far too easy, and he's not dependable as a pass blocker in isolation at left tackle. He's definitely outperformed his draft position. He's been well worth every single penny he's been bought, but he's been paid. But for me, he hasn't learned that one fundamental in the 3 years that he's been at the Bears. If the light doesn't go on, I don't think it's going to, in terms of him being able to do that as a pass protector, to be dependable on that left side. Certainly not going to get paid like a starter, I don't think, when he sees free agency next year.
There's two more names.
I think it's a position we've got to upgrade.
There's two more. Oh, I'm sorry, brother. Didn't mean to cut you off. There's two more names on here that that's interesting to me that I would like you to break. Yeah, Jedrick Wills and Dan Moore Jr. Now, Jedrick Wills was a former first-round pick. I believe it was in 2020. He was their number 10 pick and had a lot of hype coming in. And if you talk to a lot of people with the Browns or a lot of Browns fans, they consider him a pretty big bust. And he was not a starter last year. He played a lot of coming in, back up, and I think that's somebody that maybe just needs a change of scenery that you probably get like on a 1 year deal to compete. And then Dan Moore Jr. would be the other one with the Steelers, who wasn't a starter last year, but actually came in to be a starter because their tackle got hurt, and he actually performed pretty well. So those are two guys that I think could be maybe a change of scenery, and maybe a player coming in that could be that average tackle, the guy that can put some competition in with a younger player like a Dan Moore Jr. I would love to hear your opinion on both of those guys.
Fun fact, Jedrick Wills was actually at Iowa with Alaric Jackson. Alaric Jackson was the left tackle. Jedrick Wills was the right. But he came into NFL because he was an athletic phenom at the combine. He came in, they were like, we've got to put him left tackle because he's a first-round pick. But Jedrick Wills is a guy that was probably more fitted to right tackle, and it's taken time for him to fit in to be a left tackle. Obviously, he got injured last year, which is why his snap percentage is as low as it was. And he has had a few knocks, but certainly at Iowa, he was a very good tackle. But again, he's probably not going to get top end of the money, the market money. So I think he's a guy that probably second or third wave of free agency. If he gets to second or third wave, that's when you start talking to his agent saying, okay, what would we be looking at in terms of a contract for him to come in and compete? And it would be to compete for the left tackle job. It wouldn't be being handed. It would be, he's going to have to compete for the job and he's going to have to win the job. And if he does, then you can look at probably a 2 to 3 year deal without too much of it being into the future. You'd have it on the shorter term, but it would certainly be upside in the fact that he's 26 years old. He's still a very athletic tackle. He hasn't changed in terms of his body type or his ability. He has had some issues with staying healthy last year, but before that, dependable player, but was probably more suited to right tackle in the NFL than left tackle. But again, he's a player that definitely I think the Bears could look at depending upon the price. But he's a guy that I think you could sneakily, maybe get a bit of a bargain there with some upside. Dan Moore Jr., like you say, is a guy that didn't really get a look in until he had to get a look in, and then it was like, oh, he can play. And it's amazing how many times you see this in the NFL where you got guys who are sort of like they're afterthoughts because they might not practice the best. They might not look fantastic in walkthroughs. But when you put them on the field and you put them against a player and they're competing, that's when you see the best of them. I used to know people that used to practice absolutely terrible, but you'd play them every single Sunday because you knew that when it was game time, that switch would come on and you'd see a different player, which is frustrating. When you're maybe sitting behind a player like that and you are practicing hard and you are doing all the right things and you're not getting an opportunity. But Dan Moore's one of those guys that was sitting behind people, did get an opportunity, and he took it and ran with it. And again, at 27 years old, would be he's going to get paid a lot more than what he got paid last year for sure. He's probably looking at, I'd say probably between 8 and 10 million, maybe. But yeah, he's definitely someone that we could take a look at with an opportunity for him again to compete at left tackle. I don't think the people you'd be looking at starting would be the people you'd be paying more for, which would be like a Ronnie Stanley or Macari if they come to free agency, or perhaps a Cam Robinson, who I think it surprised people because he was sort of, isn't he a starter? But last year I think he showed that he was, played pretty well at left tackle for the Vikings. Certainly got paid well because they picked up the remainder of his contract that he signed with the Jag. Was it the Jags he came from?
Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Yeah, he came from Jacksonville. Yeah, and he fit in pretty nicely for the Vikings last year. So he'll be available. And then Bearlissmo, thank you guys for watching here, Chicago Sports Podcast, Monsters of the Madhouse. Like and subscribe, and you can get the YouTube notifications popping up on your phone. We're going to be doing a jersey giveaway too for 3,000 subscribers. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And we appreciate you guys' support here for Monsters of the Madhouse, Chicago Sports Podcast. And Bearlissmo, I was going to see if I go to a couple of the defensive positions. Yeah, you just hit it right there. Maybe an edge rusher or an interior defensive lineman, because we're going to be looking to upgrade it on the defensive line, as that's where we're trying to get into the trenches here with our new coaching staff. And I'm looking at our list right here. There's a couple of guys that stand out to me. You got a couple of the veterans like Calais Campbell that are in there, but then you got a guy like from the Cowboys. And I see what you got from Keenlaw from the Jets, who I that would probably be on my top 3 list as well, as you were highlighting his name.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few people that are definitely upside players. I mean, BJ Hill has been a good player every single year that he's been at the Bengals, and was getting paid well. But that would be a sort of a shorter term thing. Javon Kinlaw is just again a huge defensive tackle who is a difference maker if you're able to spell him. But Javon Kinlaw is a bit of a similar sort of body type to Javon Dexter. So he's more of that sort of 3-tech kind of. Milton Williams is a guy that's getting a lot of traction, obviously lately, because he came and played well for the Eagles in their postseason, particularly came on and shined. So he's a guy that's probably going to get some looks, I would have thought. LeBron Ray is a guy that sort of like not a lot of people talk about, but he's a guy that can play as a 1 or a 3-tech. But there are some players there at defensive tackle that you could legit take a look at. And Jerry Tillery is a guy who played well, as well as a taller, longer defensive end stroke defensive tackle who would fit the sort of body type, because he seems to like larger defensive linemen in the hole. So his defensive ends between 260 and 280. His defensive tackles, between sort of 6'3" and 6'5". That's the kind of guys that he likes. Mike Penner would be a guy, at 34, late round sort of free agency. If it very dependable when he was at the Bears, and again, a guy that you can bring in, and you don't have to worry about him too much. Sheldon Rankins, I know a lot of people have talked about
That was
his
one on my list too.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of obviously his experience with the defense. So it'd be a guy that you could kind of bring in and sort of take a look at from that point of view. Derek Nandy, a very athletic one tech, if there is such a thing. So if you imagine Billings, but slightly younger, and that's what Derek Nandy is. So there's a few names there on defensive tackle, but again, Javon Hargrave sort of towards the end of his career, but
Had some injury
there's so
issues.
many. Yeah, but there are so many sort of names. As you see, there's a long list of defensive tackles. So it really depends upon what he wants to get. But I think if he's going to be looking for a vet, it's probably going to be a more of a one tech, I think, rather than a three tech. I think a three tech, because they're asked to sort of just get upfield a lot more, penetrate the offensive line. That's something where you can maybe look at the draft as well for interior. But in terms of edge, obviously there's a few names here that are getting a lot of talk. Chase Young, a lot of people are talking about bringing him in. Again, he's still the same Chase Young that he was at Washington in terms of, coming back off a horrific injury, played on a sort of a 1-year deal last year, got paid well for it, and he performed well. Josh Sweat, obviously another one. I saw already in chat people talking about Matt Judon. Definitely looked like he was in decline to me last
I
year
thought so
in,
too. I didn't
in
like
his
the
play.
way he played with the Falcons.
But I mean, if you, again, in terms of like, there are other names that you can look at that again, you're kind of looking at that, maybe not sort of as household names, but guys that could help, like Charles Omenihu. I mean, a lot of people, former Texas player, I believe he was. Um, he's a good defensive end in terms of like Hassan Reddick, probably not a fit for us, just because of the body type. He's like 5'11" and 240. That's not really going to be a fit for the type of defensive ends we're looking at. Lorenzo Carter, again, probably not a fit for our scheme it's going to be looked at. But Preston Smith, potentially, on the
Yes.
older side, but was very good again for the Steelers and previously in his career. Deshaun Hand, not really a fit, but one of the names that I don't see here right now, but
Like
Josh Uche, former Patriots defensive end out of Michigan, very good pass rusher, and he holds the edge pretty well as well. But Demarcus Lawrence is another name that I know a lot of people have been talking about. He's been a fantastic defensive end, but I think you'd be getting him towards the end of his career.
I think he's also he was hurt last year too. Didn't he only played for I
He
think like
was
4 games for the Cowboys last year.
he got hurt quite early on, and Marcus Davenport as well has not been able to stay fit. But again, body type, sort of the right sort of body type for what I believe that we'll be looking for, which is sort of like larger, longer defensive ends who are athletic. So I think again, defensive end, you could kind of get. I don't think we'll be looking at the top of the market, if I'm being honest, in free agency. I'd be surprised if we get a big ticket free agent, like a Khalil Mack, unless it's going to be significantly less, like half of that sort of sum.
That's a
I
lot of
can't see
money.
him being back on the Bears because, I don't think we're going to be shopping at the top end of the market for defensive ends. I think it's going to be maybe one of the slightly less flashy names that you'd be looking at to maybe sort of bring in to compete at defensive end. But I think there will be some depth there as well for it to pull out of there.
And then there's one more position I would like to go over before we get into our draft today, and that is the safeties. 'Cause I think we're going to have to think about looking at some more depth for our safety position, especially with Jaquan Brisker. We don't know what his status now. Everything that we keep hearing is he's going to be okay and ready to go for the start. But at the same time, we're going to have to find a little bit more depth in there, and I think there's some good names out there.
Well, that's the one that I would throw all the money in the world at, right there. Talanoa Hufanga, former USC, absolutely fantastic safety. He's genuinely a guy who can play one high or two high or be the rogue in the box that you bring down. He's a guy that I would throw the money at in terms of safety. But there's some other names as well I was talking to you about before that, guys that I particularly like. Cam Bynum is a safety from the Vikings, making them worse, making us better. Very dependable for them. Jeremy Chinn, Trevon Mayrig, both are very good. And then sort of again towards the back end of his career, Justin Simmons. But you want to talk top end of the market for maybe not top end of the price. Very good safety that you could bring in as a vet if you wanted to go the vet route. But these are the sort of names that I'd be looking at. It's sort of like a Jeremy Chinn, Trevon Mayrig. Those are two of the ones. Cam Bynum, as I mentioned, and Azola Polomayo, him or Hufanga. But Hufanga would be the one that I would, put a circle around twice, underline it 2 or 3 times, maybe get a couple of highlighters out, a neon sign possibly if I could get that outside of Hallis Hall on the way of Ryan Poles' commute in. If he hits free agency, I would love to see the Bears get a Talanoa Hufanga. I think he's been a guy that I've loved since college and a fantastic player.
So I think it'll be interesting. Go ahead.
I see in chat someone saying move Tyreek to free safety. Wouldn't be a bad shout to move him to. Wouldn't be a bad shout to see it move him to strong safety. I think more than free safety. He's more of a hitter than a coverage type guy. But they're basically the same thing on the Bears. The scheme that we're going to be looking at this year. He likes to have interchangeable because then when you see a motion, you can just rotate down whichever side you want to rotate, and they do the same job. So you can, your two safeties are both going to have to be the deep middle or being able to come down to the box. They're going to have that flexibility. But I think there's a possibility we may see 1 or even 2 in free agency, names that you'd probably recognise. And if we could get Hufanga, I'd be a very happy man.
Do you think Kevin Byard,
providing he's healthy, obviously?
From Howie R. Bears, it says, do you think Kevin Byard's a trade possibility, especially with being reunited with a guy like with Mike Vrabel, who's now with the Patriots? And I was like, I think anything's possible with a new coaching staff in general. But as Kevin Byard, it could be, especially if you go into the free agent market and see what you can.
I think Byard had a very good comeback that year.
So did I.
Compared to the former year that he had, he's a guy that I wouldn't mind seeing stay with the Bears, to be honest. But if there was an offer, we wouldn't be sellers in this market. And Paulson Adebo, Howie Bears, I like you thinking there. Former Stanford cornerback, very good coverage, man coverage cornerback more so. But yeah, he's a corner that I like as well. So some good names coming through chat. So yeah, good work, chat. Byron Murphy obviously is a guy you would probably want to look at if you're going to look at cornerback.
I wonder if this. It's funny. I wonder if the Vikings will. He's up for a not transition tag, but why am I drawing a blank here? Not the transition tag, but what's the other tag? Franchise tag. Yeah, and so they have the opportunity to franchise tag them. I wonder if that's a guy they would do that. Although I think they would have done that already, but I know he's up for that. So I don't know if they let that guy go or not because they got a lot of other free agents as well. So that's an interesting name because that would be on my list too. But it's also the cornerback position is what are you willing to spend or do you want to spend with how much do you want to spend with this position where I think we're pretty solid at as well.
It's one of the best coach positions on the Bears, generally speaking, and that's sort of the reason why they've retained that coach is because he's a very good defensive backs coach. So I think as we showed last year, our reserves came in and played very well for us at cornerback and slot cornerback, particularly. Blackwell when he came in was dependable. Jalen Jones when he came in was dependable. I think we've done pretty well with our defensive back. So I don't think again. We need to look necessarily at the top end of the market there. But like I say, there are some names. I mean, yes, he was injured last year. Hufanga at safety and Adebo at cornerback, but both very, very dependable players that you could certainly take a look at. But I like our coaching on that side of the ball, our defensive backs coaching, particularly now with, our defensive coordinator and our defensive what's his name? Mike. Used to be a nightmare for us.
For who? Oh, I'm sorry. Who are you trying to bring up?
I'm trying to bring up our coaches' names because I've not committed them to memory.
The guy that we just kept. Correct.
No. I'm trying to think of his name. Al Harris. Defensive backs passing game coordinator.
Very good coach too. With the Cowboys.
Yeah. And Matt Giordano, I don't know if people remember, the former Colts safety played against us in the Super Bowl. He's an assistant defensive backs coach. He was a good defensive backs coach. But I think we were very lucky to retain some of the people that we did.
I do
Um,
too, and I like our coaching staff going into the season, and that's why I
yeah.
think it's going to be interesting to see what we do as we're breaking down free agency here, and we have Bearlissmo with us tonight. Thank you for having us on, and make sure you guys share this video as well as you guys are watching this afternoon. Share this to all your friends. Share this, especially the diehard Bears fans, and you guys can join us and tell them to join us on our YouTube channel here, the Chicago Sports Podcast, Monsters of the Madhouse. Bearlissimo. So we went over free agency today, and now I would love to go over the draft. Yep, you were just thinking, you were reading my mind right now, man, because you did a very good job breaking it down. There's a lot of guys that we can go through, and now we're going to do a mock draft here, and especially as we were talking to free agency about our offensive line, the center and the guard position, but depending what we do here, do we stay with the 10th pick? Is this where we go with a tackle? Is this where we go with the defensive line? So I think you could just go right ahead, Bearlissmo, and start it. And then you guys in the chat, let us know what you're thinking as well as we continue this draft, and share the video as you're doing the draft with us.
So yeah, I mean, it really depends. So Will Campbell goes very early. Mason Graham off the board. So there's a lot of and Michael Williams off the board as well. So it's a case of looking at what the value you're going to get in potentially a trade offer, because there's already 3 tackles that I like.
I think it's very hard to trade the 10th pick this year, because I think I think this is a good draft for depth, but at the same time, I think if you're picking in the top 10, there's going to be some of those players there. But if you have a trade like this is something would you consider moving down for? But I think I'd like to stay, and I think that's your call too. But I like the 10th pick where we're at with the players that are available.
Yeah, so for me, Kelvin Banks Jr., Tyler Booker, and Josh Simmons are all guys that I would love to have on the Bears. Only 2 of them obviously are tackles, and the other one's a guard. I'm less happy drafting at 10 a guard at all. I'd be happy staying with a tight end, but the way that this has gone, where we've only had 1 tackle go off the ball, and we've got teams behind us that probably are not going to be looking at tackle, and the majority, maybe the Colts might go tackle, but looking at 18, I'd be okay in entertaining a trade down. You could go for James Pierce Jr., but who would a little bit on the light side. I think there are better fits that we can get in like the second round. I think Edge actually in this draft has got some very good players, even
I
into
agree with that.
third and fourth round. Same as tight ends, got a lot of depth to it. So it's not something you necessarily have to reach early unless it's like, huge, quite obvious, difference maker. So for me, in terms of these offers that we're getting here, 19 and 53 in a second, or 18 and 50 alone, I'm happy to give 1 pick than I am to go 2. But if this was me, and I'd be okay in entertaining this and saying, let's move back to 18. So as it's my draft, and I am the CEO of this draft.
Hey man, I'm not going to disagree with you. Hey, we got Viz Joe here says, what do you think of Pierce?
Yeah, I don't think he's a body type fit for what we're looking at. I'm not going to be. Maybe going 1 pick and going up some picks there.
Yeah,
that's
get
a
another
possibility.
I think that's a good
because
possibility too.
Kelvin Banks Jr. and I'm only moving back 1 spot. I'm going to actually accept this because now I have, I think, 6 picks inside the top 60. So I'm actually going to move back 1 more spot, and then I've still got Kelvin Banks Jr. So I'm going to say that what I would be, my tackle number 1, left tackle number 1, is Josh Simmons. But I'm gonna because I pick him on all of my mock drafts I ever do. I'm actually going to go Kelvin Banks Jr. on this one, and I'm going to take a guy that has some inconsistency when he gets too aggressive, but is very solid pass blocker and decent in the run. He's a guy who works better in tandem in the run than single blocking, but he's a very, very, very dependable pass blocker, very athletic. So I'm going to go Kelvin Banks Jr. on the basis that Josh Simmons, we're not 100% happy, but otherwise, Josh Simmons or Kelvin Banks Jr., I don't think you can go wrong with either one, but I'm going to go on for this draft for the purpose of saying, let's say Josh Simmons isn't going to be able to start the season. I'm going to say Kelvin Banks Jr., but our left tackle moving forward into the future.
I believe that's who I took in my last mock draft was, I think, in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I like both of them. And there's the other tackle at LSU, as I mentioned to you, he's a right tackle, but I think he's a fantastic player See, when you talk about defensive ends, Shamar Stewart's more of a body fit for us than the previous one we were looking at. I'm not happy with either of those trades, to be honest.
No, I didn't
Uh,
like
a
those.
guy
Now,
a guy who's fallen to me said you could literally all four of these you could not make a wrong pick. But in terms of value, because I've got two picks later, I'm actually going to say Xavier Watts because he is the best safety in the draft, and it's not even close. And he's the best safety that's come out in probably certainly 3 or 4 years, I think. So
so that's
I'm
interesting because I don't think I've seen him that high picked in any of the Bears mock drafts. And yes, I like the way I remember watching him in the playoffs too, making some impact.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. You could literally say any one of these four. Bannon Jr. I think is fantastic, and in fact, I'm going to tell you now because we've got picks 39, 41, 50, 53. We've got four picks in this round. I'm actually going to say I'm happier to look at defensive end a little bit later, and maybe even guard a little bit later, and I'm looking potentially to get the best safety in the draft and the best tight end, in my opinion. Yeah, the Penn State is it Warren that went in the first round.
Went in the
Tyler
first. It
Warren,
did, yes, correct.
yeah, went at 14. A lot of he's more of a sort of an all round, but I think for Ben Johnson, I think having a Harold Fanning Jr. would be an absolute game changer to have as a move piece to really dictate to give Caleb the information on what the defense is doing, but also to be able to say, okay, but Mike Green, excellent pass rusher. Shamar Stewart, definitely the right type of body type. Incredible athlete at defensive end for his size. I mean, the guy is ridiculous, 6'5", 281, but he moves like a 250, 260 guy. Like this says, pass rushing technique is unrefined. He doesn't have a lot of change ups, but what he does do is he's got exceptional length and strength and power, and that's something that if you can teach him some counters, some counter moves, I think you're okay. But for the sake of not rattling on, we're going to go Xavier. We're going to shock the world. We're going to take a safety with our second pick, Xavier Watts. I'm not going to entertain
And
the
then
pick.
you guys can let us know in the chat what you think as well too.
Yeah, tell me what I'm doing wrong. I mean, I'm sure lots of people will. But
Oh, I'll believe me. The first time I did this, man, I was doing everything. I think I did everything I was doing wrong, man.
well,
But I actually I do like the pick of it.
I'm going to upset Howie R Bears here because he says Fanning Jr. is a bust. I've watched a lot of his tape, and when I'm saying tape, I don't mean highlights. I mean full game tape, and I am sold on him being very good. And like I say, we've got four picks in this round. I'm going to look at defensive end one after that, but to get the best safety and what I think is potentially the best tight end as a pass receiving threat, which is what we need at tight end. We've already got a guy who can block really well. It's something that I'm not going to trade back again because we'll be here all night otherwise. Gray Zabel, a guy I like that you could put at tackle or left guard, so he's good. Landon Jackson is another guy that's sort of that same type of body fit. He's a little bit more stiff for me. A guy that I do like, it just went before us, is Emmanuel. But for me, I'm going to actually go guard.
Ole Miss, right? Yes, Ole Miss.
Yeah. Well, Ole Miss last year, but before that, he was at Florida. But he's actually got really good pass rush stuff. So when I talked about other players that maybe don't have counters, Emmanuel is probably one of the most refined pass rushers in the draft. In terms of his motor, it ran hot and cold at times, but I think he's a guy that was maybe a little bit underweight last year. Could afford to put on another 5-10 pounds that maybe would have helped him. But for me, I'm gonna say there's a lot of players I like here. Deone Walker at tackle, Gray Zabel I really like, but I'm going to go most athletic guard in the draft. I'm going to go Donovan Jackson, Ohio State, left guard or left tackle, as he filled in last year at left tackle as well. Gray Zabel goes the very next pick, Deone Walker the very next one after that. So now we can still get our defensive end if we want. Emory Jones,
Yeah, and
is a fantastic tackle as well, by the way.
I got one here from in the chat. We got one here from Javier Bears, Darius Alexander, or Josh Farmer.
Farmer a little bit short-armed, but Farmer again very similar to the guy that came out of Florida State last year. So that's who we're talking about, isn't it? Um, yeah,
Yes.
so neither for me in the second round. I'm looking sort of more sort of third or fourth round. But uh, in terms of body fit, because I'm looking at obviously defensive end, Tutu is a guy that's sort of like not flashy, but just dependable. So if you think Montez Sweat, slightly smaller, but the other side, and again, a guy that started for a number of years at Ohio State, has been dependable every single year he's played. So defensive end, I'm actually quite happy to take him. But Kyle Kennard is a guy I like as well, but he's more sort of a twitchy kind of guy. But for me, Donovan Iziraku is a little bit lightweight. Landon Jackson's a little bit stiff, so I'm going to go with Tuimoloau at defensive end here.
Mhm. Longest arms. We got one here from Howie R. Bear. Says longest arms.
Yeah, but I think it's just a little bit lightweight for what our defensive Dennis Allen likes. He tends to like guys who are a little bit on the bigger, stronger side.
Thank you guys. I see you guys all in the chat watching tonight. Make sure you share our video of our draft of free agency. You can share it. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think of our draft so far. We got Bearlissmo giving us his expertise, and we'd love to see your expertise as well. So please do that and let us know what you think so far. And I think it's this is it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bearlissmo, but if this is going to be a draft too, I think especially you talked about defensive linemen, but some of the guards, tackles, and tight ends also you could find mid route. I think there's going to be a lot of depth there.
There is, and there are a number of players, like you say. I mean, if in terms of, not sure why it keeps going down, but we'll just have to wait till our next pick comes up, or we can pause it. We can pause it, can't we? So in terms of tight end, similar sort of guys. I mean, if you want a Cole Kmet kind of type of tight end, Luke Lachey. Brenningstall is more of a sort of a taller, gangly type of tight end. Jalen Conyers at Texas Tech's more of a move tight end, so he's not going to be a great run blocker. He's going to be more of a move type bloke. A guy I like is again they've got him as a sort of a free agent. Is Maliki Matavao out of UCLA, but he's the kind of guy that I look and I think when you've got your second or third tight end in, the ones that are there to pass block and then chip release and go into the flat, the guys who are going to work as like a late release against zone, that sort of thing. He's a guy that is a really nice fit, I think, for what we do. But there are receivers you can get late in terms of on the defense. When you're looking at edge, there are guys that I really, really like. Kaimon Rucker, I think, might be the best pass rusher or one of the best pass rushers in this draft. He's got absolutely fantastic stuff. But a guy you can get late. Oban out of Notre Dame, Baron Sorrell are guys who I both think would fit pretty well for us. Defensive tackle as well as a number of guys that I like as three techs here. And Aeneas Peebles is a guy that I like as a three tech. But yeah, some good names. But we'll keep the draft rolling because we don't pick to 149, so we've got a little bit of time to go before we're taking a look. So our picks so far: Kelvin Banks Jr., Xavier Watts at safety, Harold Fanning Jr. tight end stroke fullback stroke move, Donovan Jackson guard stroke left tackle, Tuimoloau would be your right defensive end. So we're coming close.
And we're getting closer to our picks.
Yeah, we're getting closer to where we're going to be taking a look.
And here we go, pick 149.
Yeah, so we'll go over to all. So let's Danny Stutzman, a very athletic linebacker, four-phase linebacker. So it would be a guy that would be, all three downs. You could leave him pass protection. More of a weak side linebacker. He's a good player. I like.
So do you think that means that one of our linebackers could be expendable than free agency?
I mean, if out of the two, it'd be if we get a trade value, and it would be for. It wouldn't be TJ Edwards. Let me put it that way.
I don't think so either.
I think TJ Edwards is indispensable at this point. I think you could afford. I'd actually like to see us extend Jack Sanborn and look at potentially moving on from our more expensive middle linebacker, because I think legit, I do believe that you could look at starting Jack Sanborn at a middle linebacker. And I don't think you'd see a fall off in play. Obviously, in terms of production, whilst he wasn't sort of spectacular, he did get some production against the pass last year. But again, I think for the cost of the contract, I think he tries too much to be a captain as well. When you hear him talking, it sort of comes off as a little bit false for me. But there's some good running backs here. Potentially, you could take a look at. Damian Martinez is a good sort of all-round back. But I think you could legit look at centre here. I like Monheim, who's obviously played with Caleb at USC. He was by far and away their best offensive lineman. Um, and
Center's definitely a position of need for us
yeah,
too.
yeah, and again, but Raheem Sanders at running back is a guy, Jake Majors. But I think I'm going to actually go. I'm going to say that we're going to, because we've got a dearth.
I see Elijah. You see, Howie Arbear says Elijah Roberts can play the D versus the run and third down versus 3 technique versus pass.
Yeah, a little bit short in our scheme. More of a sort of a 6'3" and 290 is not really sort of a 4'3", and he'd be more of a sort of a 3'4" end type size. But again, coming out of SMU, I'm just not sure it's a guy that I would take at this position. But for me, I want to actually get a centre that can compete to start for us. So I mean, that's where I'm going to look. I'm going to look at the centre, and I'm actually going to go with we've got an Ohio State left guard, and we could go an Ohio State centre, or we could go with
team that won the championship. I don't know how you can go wrong.
You could go that, or you could go Jonah Monheim. So I don't think either of these would be wrong. But I'm going to go Seth McLaughlin, and we'll go there.
Seth McLaughlin.
I'm thinking now at this stage. I'm thinking about taking a look at a running back with our next pick, potentially.
I agree with that. I'm a big ETN
or a
fan
tight end, yeah. But I think there are sort of we need a dependable pound it back as well that can catch the ball.
Roberts SMU from Chicago Sports Podcast.
Yeah, 33.5-inch arms is not bad, but
no, I got those arms too. Thank you guys. Make sure you guys share our video today too of our show as we're talking about the Bears. We talked about some free agency. We're talking about the draft right now. We're doing our mock draft, and we are in the 4th round, I believe. Is that correct, Bearlissmo?
So we've gone pretty quick. So there are some defensive.
And thank you guys in the chat for the help.
Yeah, if you want your run pluggers, you've got your Jeremy Caldwell. Tonka is a very sort of penetrating 3-tech. But defensive tackle, I think, is a spot that there might be a couple of guys here that I like. Yeah, the other one's already gone. So I'm thinking in terms of what have we already got? Do we have a defensive tackle? We don't. I think I'm actually going to go for a penetrating defensive tackle. I do like Tonka Hemingway. I think he's a guy that could be very nice as a 3-tech. So we're going to go, yeah, Tremaine Edwards. Bear Truth speaks a lot of truth there. It's in his name, Bear Truth. But yeah, Tremaine has been underplaying his contract, I think. Unspectacular, I think you'd probably say.
Hemingway, I've seen sometime 5th round projections for him as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know the Senior Bowl guys. I know that there's a lot of people that have been talking about him there, but just gonna go. Are we actually on? We're drafting? No, we're not. We're not till 220. Luke Lachey just went.
Lachey's another one of those tight ends that I like coming out too.
Yeah, so we've gone for a tight end that is already a pass receiving threat, a legit seam threat, and a move tight end threat. So Conyers isn't really. I don't really want to have too many of those. Jacob Gideon is another guy you could look at centre, by the way, Western Michigan. Very impressive tape from him, I think. Carson Vincent is a guy that at the Senior Bowl looked absolutely fantastic at left tackle, that you would be able to move inside potentially as well to left guard. That guy was hella impressive, really long arms as well at the Senior Bowl, I think, from memory. I'm just going to look up his numbers from Senior Bowl. Carson Vincent, Senior Bowl measurements. 35-inch arms.
Ooh.
Yeah, so he was very impressive in one-on-ones as well in pass pro. So in terms of a value pick, yeah, I do kind of want to look at a running back at this point. But in terms of what's left at running back, Donovan Edwards wouldn't be a bad shout actually out of Michigan.
Mhm.
Again, a guy who can catch the ball and can run.
It's interesting. Most guards, so I look at Chicago Sports Podcast. Most guards, 32 to 34-inch arms on average, 34 to 35 probably for offensive guards.
No, guards, you tend to be a little bit shorter, so you don't want to be under 32
Okay.
at guard. Otherwise, you're looking at being a centre. If you're at 32 and a half or under, you're probably going to be a centre. Yeah, running back is a position that I would like to take a look at. There's a guy I normally go with. Phil Maffer is a guy that I normally go with late, but he's not available on this. But Donovan Edwards, I actually think is a guy I really like. But what I like is his versatility as a 3-down back. But he runs with a hell of a lot of effort, and he's very shifty in the hole. So I think he's actually really good value here. To get him in round 7, he's like a round 5 type back for me. So I'm actually going to go Donovan Edwards from Michigan, get a running back, and then we'll look at, in terms of what do we have left with our last pick, who's going to give us some
One
value.
last pick left.
I mean, Xavier Trust being here at this late stage is ridiculous.
At this stage, yeah, this stage you will see what we can get, and
Tight end as well. There is actually, in fact, I'm going to go with a guy that, again, no one will have been talking about, but he's a guy that I really like. And I'm going to go with Maliki Matava. I'm not going to risk getting him in free agency. I'm going to go with him. Again, no one's talked about him, I dare say, but he's a guy that I really like out of UCLA. In fact, what I'll do is I'm going to see if I can pull some of his tape so I can show you guys, because he's a guy I do like.
to what I was saying earlier, this is the tight end position for the draft this year is going to be something that that I think there's a lot to choose from, and there's a lot that you can pick from, even if it's between fifth and the 7th
Yeah,
round.
Eurosec's good. Bartholomew's good out of Pitt. But in terms of a guy that can block and get out there, Eurosec's more sort of a linear. He's not sort of he's not very good getting in and out of his cuts for me. But I'm gonna go with a flight. In fact, let's just see if there's anyone else that I like the look of. Because safety wouldn't be a bad shot to get double dip and get in there, or even potentially wide receiver, depending upon who's still available. Just Efton Chisholm out of Eastern Washington, he's a good player as well. He's I was talking about him. Do you remember Luke McCaffrey a couple of years ago in the draft, the wide receiver?
Yes, I do.
Efton Chisholm is almost like a Luke McCaffrey clone in terms of the way he looks on tape.
Jerome brings up a good point. He goes, he thinks Ben and Ryan are going to prioritize running back in the early round. I think they probably, I think they're going to be either doing that or in free agency, but I think running back is certainly something they're going to be looking after early.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of smoke around sort of Judkins and the Bears, so that's a possibility. But yeah, I'm gonna stick to my guns. I'm gonna go with a name that you won't see in other mock drafts, but I particularly like his tape. That's Maliki Mataval as a special teams stroke third tight end.
That's what's going to be important about this draft this year is you just mentioned tight end special teams. I think I think the depth is something the Bears are really going to have to cover. We need more depth on this team.
So I'll download that and I'll send that to you so you can post it afterwards if you'd like. But that's the draft we come up with. Kelvin Banks Jr. on a trade down, who we also got Donovan Jackson out of that trade, and JT Tumalau. Xavier Watts, the safety out of Notre Dame, best safety in the draft in my opinion. Harold Fannin Jr., the thought of Ben Johnson being able to use him is a little bit ridiculous. We get our centre to compete with being the starter, very experienced centre, played very well last year as well. Tonka Hemingway, a 3-tech sort of special. Kalijah Cansey, do you remember him out of Pitt? Tonka Hemingway is very similar in terms of upfield burst and lateral agility. Donovan Edwards, a 3-down running back, and Maliki Matavau as a special teamer, stroke core special teamer, stroke third tight end, a guy who's really good, particularly against working against zone, working screens, that sort of thing. Late release guy, but he's also able to threaten the seam. A good positional blocker at tight end as well. So that's the draft that we've come up with. Um,
You guys could let us know what you think in the comments as well. What do you think of our draft? What do you think of Bearlissmo breaking down? What do you think is what our needs are for the Bears? Let us know what you think. And like and subscribe our video here on our YouTube channel. Also, make sure you share our video as well and let us know what you think about the draft. And it's gonna be so funny here too, Bearlissmo. What I feel like these whenever the mock drafts, and they're gonna start really exploding even more over the next couple of
mm,
weeks. But I feel like there's certain players that either fall a little bit or go up a little bit, and I think that's going to happen for next week. There's the bowl next week, I believe, right?
it's the NFL
Why am I drawing a
Combine.
blank here? Combine. Yes, next week's the NFL Combine. So that's what I'm saying. After the NFL Combine, do you see that? And I think I see it every year too. Is after the Combine's over, even though sometimes I think it's a little overrated, but I think there's going to be different players falling and going back and forth.
Yeah, it's funny because the combine quite often you'll see, like, for example, an offensive tackle who's got really good tape, who's got like 35-inch arms, will fall because he gets 24 reps on the bench press. Whereas a guy who's got 33-inch arms might rise because he's got, let's say, 34 reps on the bench press. Yet his tape is nowhere near what the other guy's tape is. And you'll also get sort of like people who will fly up, defensive end who has a really good short shuttle, he has a really good vert, he has a really good 40, will fly up the boards, although he doesn't have any pass rush stuff. Or a guy, a wide receiver that maybe runs like a 4.6, but is getting lateral separation on tape, but will fall because he got a 4.6, bearing in mind that he might not be um, fully fit at the combine. You don't really know what's gone into that process. I think you have to rely upon both things and think about the things that matter to you in terms of context. You use it to differentiate what you see on tape, not to replace it. And I think if you do that at the combine, I think you won't go too far wrong. Don't get too high, don't get too low on players if they don't. If they do have a really bad 40, like if Donovan Edwards runs a 4.8, then you can pretty much take him out. Wingspan thresholds, Howie R. Bears mentioning in chat. I don't know if you want to bring up that comment.
Yep,
Yeah.
right here, just came through.
A lot of people will hard and fast say, I won't draft a tackle if his arms are under 33.5 inches. I think it's a nonsense. And that's the reason why people are talking about Gray Zabel as moving to centre or guard, because they're expecting his arms to come in under 33. And now, if that's the case, yeah, it is on the shorter side. It is going to be an issue for him. But when you've got very good technique, you can use that to your advantage. The way that defensive ends are rushing isn't the same way. They'll use like fake moves. They use hesitation moves. They use flash, like a one-hand flash to chop down. It, the game has changed at defensive end and at offensive tackle. It's all well and good having great length like Braxton Jones, who's got ridiculous length at offensive tackle, but he doesn't sit his ass down. He doesn't use independent hand striking, and people get into his chest consistently who've got significantly shorter arms. So it really depends upon what you're seeing on tape and whether you think they're going to be coachable. But yeah, there are points where you kind of have to really deeply consider whether you're going to take them higher. So it's more sort of like, what is the value of the investment versus what is the threshold and arm length. If it's, let's say, for example, Gray Zabel and he drops to the fourth round, well, based on his tape, you'd absolutely take him because he's very good tape at left tackle, and he played very well at the Senior Bowl, both at left tackle, left guard, and centre. So he's definitely a guy you would take. So I can see a value to it, but it's not like you can't use it without any other context. So you have to take it in that perspective. Is it a deal breaker? I think you look at the tape first, and you look at the competition. You bear that in mind. So when guys are going up against, for example, Shamar Stewart or whatever, or at the Senior Bowl, there were guys who've got much longer arms than Gray Zabel, but Gray Zabel held his own. Well, if he's got shorter arms, fine. If he's got great technique and he's holding his own, That's what you really sort of want to base it on. He's like, what does the tape tell you? What do those meetings that you meet, when you meet with him, how coachable does he seem? Is he retaining everything? When he's in the senior bowl, is he working off the field? That sort of thing. Those are the things you're looking at. And you've got to bear that in mind on your actual things like, wingspan alone. Wingspan alone can hurt you at some positions as well. Like a centre with 35-inch arms, he's going to be slow to get his hands up because they're longer levers. So does that help?
Uh, yeah, and let us know what you guys think here in the chat room. And Bearlissmo, as we finish off our draft here, I think you're going to pull up some tape of I think of some of the players you've taken here, or some of the players that you're keeping an eye on here in this year's draft.
Yeah, so
kind of break down a little bit what we could be looking at.
I mean, what I've actually done is I've pulled some tapes from LSU, Oregon, so Ohio State offensive line, and LSU. I think with two of the ones that I was looking at, but so LSU. The reason why is because you got two players, both of these tackles. I think so. In terms of like being able to highlight them, that's the guy that everyone's talking about as being the first, first offensive lineman taken. He's Will Campbell,
right?
And Emory Jones is the other one. So both of these guys, if you keep an eye on these two, they're both exceptional. But in terms of like, I don't see. For me, everyone's talking about Trey Smith at guard. I think if you manage to get an Emory Jones, you could play him at right tackle, but we've got Darnell Wright there. But the thought of moving him into here to guard to play next to a Darnell Wright, when you watch him on tape, getting down to the second level, working on him, flushing him out of the hole, still staying in on it. I love the tenacity of this guy. He's got a real edge to him, and you'll see him just literally right the way to the whistle and through. He's giving full effort. Will Campbell is a technician. People are talking about Will Campbell having short arms. His technique is excellent. So again, the eye discipline, very well coached guys. It's just a sprint action there. What I love is, you'll see, still, I don't know if you saw there, but if we just go back a little bit, right at the end of that previous play, if you just watch the right-hand side of the screen here, that's Emory Jones. I mean, it could potentially be called for unnecessary roughness there, but I love the and again the pass set. I mean, they're obviously teaching vertical. You got a 45-degree pass set there. You got a vertical there against a wider technique. Got three technique here, which is why he's probably doing a 45 with his guard coming to help. Looks like they're sending the line to the right. Emory Jones going more of a sort of a straight back pass set. They're working a stunt, passes it off perfectly. Really good stuff.
I like his aggression.
Sorry?
I said I like his aggression.
Yeah, and I like his technique with that, and his body type as well is fantastic. If you watch his body position in terms of his hip position, Campbell actually gets a little bit higher than Emory Jones does. Emory Jones, if you look, he's in a good power position all the time. And single hand strike to the shoulder, and then one hand inside, gets a long arm. Let's see what he does with the long arm. Does he chop it down? Just working him. Just a very good player, and he's a guy that, the more you watch the tape, I like both of the tackles at LSU. I don't think you can really go wrong.
Campbell, by the way, is a name that's definitely being talked about. That can be a top. I've seen anywhere from a top 5 to a top 10 pick in this year's draft.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly top 6 is where a lot of people are projecting him. But again, in terms of this is from earlier in the season, so you got the guard there, and I think that's Simmons on the left tackle here. So you got Jackson and Simmons here. So you're looking at both of these. But again, watch it. It's the body position. If you look, his butt doesn't come up too high. Great power position. Nice drive block. Gets a swim move, but stays sticky. Stays on him. Good movement up front. Both the guard and the tackle there. Again, watching this side of the line because, legit, and obviously centre as well. So you've got 3 here you could take a look at. Good move there for the pulling guard. That's actually a really tough block, actually. For a centre to come to a 3 tech, that's actually a really tough ask. right-handed centre snapping back. So the three things you're looking at here for centre: snap location in terms of he's got to go over here. So what you'd expect is when a right-handed centre is going to the right, you normally see the snap get pulled to one side. It's normally to the left. It's very tempting to just pull the ball. It goes off to the left. But if you watch the snap location, right on his hands, gets to the three tech, his guard's able to pull. You got Jackson, you've got mate, is it what's his name? I drafted him for Christ's sake. But again, just great stuff there by the Ohio State offensive line. It's just a bubble pass it in the day, it's just a quick screen.
And how many projected Ohio State this year has got what 2 to 3 projected starter to enter in the draft from their offensive line this year?
Yeah, so literally this half of the line is the center, the guard, the tackle. Again, working the double, getting movement up front. Good stuff. Huge hole for the running back to run through. Judkins, I think, love the way he finishes his runs. No, it's not. That's Henderson, isn't it? Again, watching the center. Again, location on the snap because, again, he's having to go to the three tech. Great stuff. Again, there's Jackson. Just walling him off. Good position block.
Yep.
You know, the tackle's doing well. Gets his guy out of the hole. Linebacker does well to come in and fill there. Again, centre. The QB actually wasn't behind him then, but again, double team. He's never going to go anywhere. But the left tackle is just. I love his body position. I love his hip balance. I love his footwork. I love his hand use. I love his length. Very athletic guy. Just got injured. And again, just look at his hip position. See how low he is. If you watch Braxton Jones, his head would probably be up here. It's night and day the difference in technique. Look, there's a twist. How do they handle that? Perfectly.
How difficult as a tackle too? How difficult is it to constantly keep your position that low and put yourself in that position to make that block, as opposed to like you just said with Braxton Jones staying a little higher up? Is there certain ways that you would have to coach? Is there certain ways that you're able to put that technique into place like he does in the film that you're breaking down?
There is one way to do it really realistically. That's repetition, repetition, repetition. It's the only way. You've got to drill it that everything you do is staying in that base. So you know every time you're walking around and you're on the field, you want to be in that sort of power base. As an offensive lineman, if you stand up, because it's so difficult because you're exerting so much effort, you kind of want to stand up to open up your lungs. But what you can actually do is you can stand up your upper half by dropping your hips, and that's what you have to do. But that kills your quads. So it's about getting that sort of that discipline, that muscle, because everything's about power. You get lactic buildup. You've got to be able to build the stamina as well as the power. So it's about work. It's about the work you get in there. Harry R. Bear is coming in with some really good comments actually in the chat, some really interesting observations, particularly on the wingspan that he's talking about as well. So that's interesting to see there. But in terms of all of these guys that I'm mentioning, you know, the centre, the guard, the tackle at Ohio State, both tackles at LSU, I don't think you can really go wrong. I mean, this is from early in the season, don't forget. So here we're going to get a pull behind the back of the centre. I think behind the guards. The guard just doing a position block. Tackle's going to lead. So this is like, you see this a lot at Chattanooga. They run that sort of inside trap a lot. But you see the way the tackle, centre went to his man. So 34 was going to be his target, but the centre didn't have a linebacker come down. So centre gets onto him, but he's still looking for work. That's just smart offensive line play. This guy isn't really his guy. It should be 34. But the centre is on 34, so he goes looks for the next nearest threat, which is, you know, this guy here. It's just really smart football. And then, you know, gets on him, gets tripped up by his centre, but, you know, gets body on body.
And that's why, and to what you're saying here too, that's why Ohio State, by the way, won the championship last year, and that's why a lot of the people have picked off their coaching tree here. And I thought last year they were so well coached, and just especially in the playoffs, the way they operated was just about as smooth as you can get.
Yeah, I mean, all three of, I mean, that side of the line. If he'd have stayed, if Simmons would have stayed healthy, I think they would have had an even better time of it. Certainly in pass game. Again, it's a working wide zone. This is applicable to Bears. that short side toss, which is what that well, it's actually wide side on this, but tight end loses his guy, but the tackle you see getting to his, it's out wide. It's really good stuff. But that's the reason why I like these guys, and obviously that's why the draft that we did was as it was. I mean, that's who we came out with. Donovan Jackson's a guy that we got. Kelvin Banks Jr. at Texas is a guy that we got, and the centre McLaughlin. We also got we got guard and centre who've worked together, got that experience. I think I'm happy with that.
I am too. And I think it's going to change here over the next couple of weeks as we get closer here to draft season, to get closer to free agency. This is such a fun time of the year, Bearlissmo. I think starting now with the transition tags and the franchise tags, and just to see what's out there. I'm really surprised this year that I haven't seen that the franchise tag hasn't been placed on anything, and I think that has to do with a lot with teams in the salary cap situations. Or it's interesting to me that nobody's been tagged yet.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't think teams were necessarily projecting for the cap to be raised as much as it has been this year, and obviously, there's a lot of teams that were already in sort of cap hell coming into this season. There's a few teams.
Like the Saints.
There's a few teams that are really struggling, really, for cap. To be honest, you know, like you said with the Saints, there's a lot of teams that sort of don't have a lot of spare. But I expect the Patriots to overpay for a lot of people and do a lot of shopping early. I don't want to see us necessarily compete for every single player. Trey Smith would be lovely to get, but if it's going to get into like 25, 26 million, I'm not that interested in it.
I think it's going to start at 20 million, and then that's the thing about free agency. I think so many teams, if they're desperate enough, will overpay. It reminds me of the Jacksonville Jaguars a couple of years ago when they first got Doug Peterson as coach.
I think to be honest, I think it's Trey Smith. I think realistically is going to set the market. So whatever the top paid guard is currently in the NFL, I think Trey Smith's contract will be in excess of that. There's some guys I would sort of think about as well. Wyatt Teller is a guy that I really like at Cleveland Browns. Really good right guard. Which team's willing to give you 2 round ones for T. Higgins? Yeah, nobody. How are we getting on there? There's very few. In fact, I don't really think there's anybody in free agency this year you would say, 2 first round picks for.
No, I don't.
You can always negotiate it as long as a player hasn't signed a free agent tag. So you can place a free agent tag, and it doesn't necessarily mean 2 round ones. I don't think unless the tag's signed, then you have to do, because they can rescind the tag. So until it's signed, so I think that is a lot of teams use it as leverage more than they intend to stay on that tag. But it's an interesting game, isn't it, to play as a team?
Yeah, it's interesting every year to see what team, and especially a team like the Bengals, who you never know what the hell they're going to do. But I mean, they still got to play Jamar Chase. I don't know what's going to happen with T. Higgins. I still don't think he's going to be there, but anything could be possible, man. When you got a quarterback like Joe Burrow that's getting a little anxious about his team here the last couple of years, he could probably have a lot to say in that.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Joe Burrow, I'm sick of getting hit all the time. That money that you could spend on wide receiver, you could legit spend on maybe getting him in an offensive line because he needs one. So I think that's what he's probably going to be pushing for that.
I think he will too. So I'm excited for this. Thank you guys for watching today, Monsters of the Madhouse Chicago Sports Podcast. Like and subscribe on our YouTube page, YouTube channel, and also share our videos when we go live here, as we go live every day and have different shows every day. Thank you guys here for the chats. I got one more here. It says, let's see here. Let's see, Batonia left guard, Wyatt Teller.
Yeah, that's the Browns. That's the Browns left guard and right guard. They're both good players. He's quite, again, Harry R. Bears. I'm quite impressed with his comments in chat. Very, very interesting.
Like players want to play willingly, not as a hostage. He has said. Mike Tomlin said a lot of interesting things over the last.
He has just put a question into the chat just now, actually, about the 3 techs in terms of free agency. I think it's very tempting to sort of say, based upon the playoff push, Milton Williams, and there's a lot to like from him. But out of the two, it's Odigizua, I think Osa Odigizua.
I like him a lot.
Yeah, I think he's the guy that I would go through. I'd be looking at as a 3-tech more so. But again, there are other guys. Again, I'd be interested to take a look at Javon Kinlaw because he's a guy that I know we looked at him when he went to the Jets. He was a free agent then, but that's a name potentially. Again, Jerry Tillery is a guy that I like as a 3-tech, although he's taller and longer, but he's got good get off. But yeah, there's a few.
Bearlissmo, as we start wrapping things up here, I wonder this question too. Is we talk a lot about the players on the Eagles, Williams and Sweat, a team that's got a great defense with great surrounding players around them that's young and everything about that. Does that? I think Sweat and Williams are both really good players, but does that worry you sometimes when they come from a team like that and then they go somewhere else and maybe don't perform as well as you would think as they become free agents?
Yeah, there is a temptation to look at a player's performance and say, okay, and that's what I was saying with the 3-tech. It's you can get sort of everyone was talking about Carter last year and his performance, but they forget the other defensive tackle that was alongside him, who was an absolute monster. They forget about the 2 defensive ends who are absolute monsters. That's the thing is when you're looking at them, is what you're seeing because everyone else is getting doubled. What's the rate in which? So you do have to look at those metrics. You do have to look at those the quantifiable stats, and you look at that against the tape. So is he working double teams? How does he? You look at the tape, and in the NFL they've got this. You can literally put in a player's name. You can say double teams. Okay, how does he play against double teams? And you'll get all of the tape of him having a double team. How does he look at 3-tech? You'll get all of the tape of him at 3-tech. How does he look at a 0 or a 1-tech? You'll get all of that tape because it's all cut up that way for them. So you can look at the in isolation those sort of things, and you can bear that in mind in your evaluation. So it's a case of you're right with the Eagles with a defense that's that well, a team that's that well coached. I think their offensive and defensive line coaches are both fantastic. I don't think Kinlaw is just a run stuffer only.
I'll pull this one back
Yeah.
up.
He's a bit of a bully. When you can leave him singled, he is a run stuffer in terms of he can play the run, but that's sort of a lately thing. When he first went to the 49ers, he was more of an upfield penetrator. I think he could be that again. So that's why Osa better versus double teams and Kinlaw true.
This one right here.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know the context. I wasn't watching enough Cowboys and is it Jets. Yeah.
Yes.
I wasn't watching enough Jets football, to be honest. I mean, they weren't a team that I was particularly interested in watching last year. Yeah.
Kinlaw in order.
Yeah, Kinlaw's a big dude, but he's a very athletic dude as well. He was a guy at South Carolina, was it? I think he came out. And he came in sort of not really having much of a clue, but he was just an athletic freak. And I don't think he's ever changed from being that. I think he's maybe refined some of his aggression, but the reason why his performance has been maybe less than it was previously was he had a couple of years where he was worn down by injury, but I think he's starting to come back now. So that's the reason why I like him. I like his tool set. I like there's things that he can't coach into somebody, and that's 6'5" and 322 with a good get off.
Go
on.
To your credit, Bearlissmo, that's one of the first guys you brought up when we started talking about the free agency and guys that we were kind of looking at.
Yeah. So, 20 pounds, I mean, that's actually not that much over that many years. It's he's been in the league, 5 years? So
About
20
5 years. Yes.
20 pounds over 5 years isn't actually that much. But again, there's people like BJ Hill. BJ Hill was better than the guy that we actually went for. It was Ryan Poles' first free agent attempt, and obviously because he had a bad foot, we didn't take him. But BJ Hill was the better of the 2 defensive tackles. But BJ Hill is a guy that can play 1 or 3 tech. So and on the older side, yes, admittedly, but there's plenty of people to take a look at in free agency, and also it's a pretty good draft, I think, for defensive tackles and
I
edge
do
this
too.
year.
I do too. And you guys can watch that too. Thank you guys for watching today. Make sure you like and subscribe. You guys could share our video too. As we go over free agency, we did that earlier in the show, and then we did a mock draft, and we did everything breaking down Bears and what Bearlissmo thinks, and everything that he put in, and his observations on what he thinks we need as we go forward here. Bearlissmo, first off, man, it's an honor to meet you tonight, man. It's an honor to have you along with me. This was
The
fun.
pleasure is mine, Matt. You've been an excellent host. Thank you for having me.
And all the knowledge and everything that you brought for us tonight, man. We can't thank you enough, and to everybody in the chat room too, man. Thank you guys so much for the help tonight. And make sure you guys do that, and you'll have all of our shows pop up. Notifications will always pop up. And thank you guys so much for all of your support. And Bearlissmo, until we talk again, man, thank you again. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. We're going to be talking Bears a whole lot here over the next couple of weeks, man. So we would love to get you back in and get your opinions, man, as we go, especially as free agency starts here in just the next couple
Yeah,
of weeks.
looking forward to free agency. Looking forward to the combine as well. It'll be interesting to see some of the performances there. Maybe
Yeah, in the shorts, right?
yeah,
The shorts.
the underwear Olympics. Yeah, it's
Yeah, but that's how we over exaggerate in the combine, man. It's the shorts and the arms and the legs, man. That's how we're gonna process it.
I like to use some of the figures as just a differentiator. So, but I think tape and context of the tape is probably more important, I think, than just purely numbers. There's a lot of players that think of Forrest Gump. That boy sure is fast, but he sure is dumb. It's like, you can have some guys that are fantastic athletes that haven't got a clue what they're doing, and vice versa. Some guys who are just like average Joes that really know their stuff and are fantastic players. There's plenty of them in the NFL. There's more Hall of Famers that were undrafted than there is first rounders. So that's hyperbole, by the way. So I'm not sure that's actually a statistical fact. Feel free to go and check that and correct me later.
Yeah. I do like that we're running the show on Forrest Gump reference.
Yeah. Why not? I mean, that boy sure is fast. He sure is dumb. But yeah, I've known plenty of players where you look at the body type and you think, oh my god, is that like a grandpa bod or a dad bod? But you watch them play and you're like, oh, this guy knows how to play. And you see other people look like Tarzan and play like Jane. It's interesting. I think it's more the fight in the dog, not the dog in the fight sometimes. And I think that's something to bear in mind. Is Deanna Walker from UK dumb? I don't know how you would define that. I think it's
I'm not going to even attempt it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I'm going to leave that one.
Yeah, he's a guy who was sort of miscast, isn't he? I think he was asked to do too much at Kentucky, to be honest. I think they relied upon him too much. And I think it's like if he out of defensive tackles, Deanna Walker felt the same as remember Ollie Gordon. Ollie Gordon, his first year at Oklahoma State. Absolutely phenomenal. Arm length does matter, but it's not a be all and end all. But yes, it does matter. Yeah,
as we talked about earlier in the show.
Bad leverage because he's probably playing 30 pounds overweight, and that affects his conditioning. And when your conditioning is bad, you play more upright. It's simple kinesthesiology. It's just that's the way your body works. The more tired you are, the more you're tempted to stand up and not keep good form, and that shows up as bad leverage. Get Deanna Walker to drop 30 pounds, and you would see a completely different player. And he could afford to drop 30 pounds. I don't think he is lazy.
No. As to your point, yeah, it's all about your endurance and how you build yourself, especially your stand-up through the end of the game.
He's a kid at the end of the day, and he's been at a college where a lot was expected from him, and I'm not sure how tight they were on his diet and things like that. So you'd have to bear that in mind. How does he interview?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for all of your insight tonight, Bearlissmo, and thank you guys so much here in the chat. We appreciate you guys, and we'll have more shows. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll have more shows popping up on your phone and keep you updated with everything Bears. And Bearlissmo, Thank you again, man. I hope you have an awesome rest of your
Thank you, likewise. And bear down, everybody. It's going to be an interesting off season.
Yeah, bear down, guys. We'll talk to you soon.